Throughout history, people have grown food in places that modern growers would immediately dismiss as useless. Mountain villages carved gardens along cold stone walls. Medieval towns relied on courtyards that barely saw an hour of direct sun. Wartime Europe kept food production alive using narrow alleys, cellar steps, and shaded monastery plots that faced north. What those growers understood, something many people forget today, is that a lack of direct sunlight doesn't eliminate the possibility of abundant harvests. It simply requires choosing vegetables that evolved to handle diffuse indirect light. North-facing gardens are typically the most underestimated growing spaces. They receive soft reflected light instead of direct beams, and temperatures stay cooler throughout the day. These conditions mimic the understory environments where many vegetables naturally evolved. Once you recognize this, the entire garden shifts from a limitation to an opportunity. What follows are the 10 best vegetables for true north-facing conditions, along with practical, historically grounded strategies to get impressive yields even where the sun barely reaches. Lettuce thrives in the cool, indirect light of north-facing beds. Lettuce has always been a staple in shaded European courtyards because it prefers mild temperatures and diffuse light. Direct sun causes bitterness and rapid bolting, while indirect light produces soft, full leaves. Well, a modern grower can plant lettuce along the north side of a fence or wall, spacing the plants so airflow prevents mildew. In hot climates, north-facing gardens extend the lettuce season by weeks and sometimes even months. Spinach grows vigorously when protected from heat and harsh rays. Shade really works in spinach's favour. Historically, northern communities used shaded plots to get reliable spinach crops when southern exposures grew too warm. To apply this today, just keep soil consistently moist and avoid letting the bed dry out, since indirect light won't evaporate water as quickly. Spinach will reward you with thick leaves, and in many climates, a north-facing garden allows for multiple harvest cycles. Kale adapts perfectly to cooler, low-light microclimates. Its origins in foggy coastal regions, make it a prime candidate for north-facing environments. It doesn't need full sun to maintain steady growth. In fact, kale grown in indirect light tends to be more tender. A practical method is to plant kale near tall structures that block midday sun. With steady watering and, occasional lower leaf removal, kale becomes one of the most dependable crops for shaded gardens. Swiss chard remains productive even when sunlight is limited. Swiss chard was widely used in monastery gardens where walls shaded half the growing space. Its large leaves develop well in indirect light, and the plant continues to regenerate after repeated cuttings. For garden use today, it's best to grow chard in raised beds on the north side of your property, and, harvest the ribs and leaves regularly to encourage constant regrowth. Arugula's bold flavour, interestingly enough, intensifies in shaded growing conditions. Arugula really flourishes in cool, filtered light, forming dense and flavourful leaves that, can become overly mild or even wilt-prone in strong sun. In a north-facing garden, temperatures tend to stay quite stable, which helps arugula maintain consistent growth. A grower can sow seeds thickly in shallow soil, trim repeatedly, and honestly just treat the bed like a perpetual cutting patch. Mustard greens deliver impressive yields without requiring direct sun. Mustard greens have a long history in terraced mountain plots that rarely received strong sunlight. Their energy demand is low, and they respond more to soil nutrients than light intensity. In a modern north-facing garden, mustard greens grow rapidly when watered well and harvested from the outside inward. Even with minimal light, they regenerate quickly. Cabbage develops compact, flavorful heads in diffuse light. Cabbage became a staple in cold, cloudy climates exactly because it can form heads without strong sun. North-facing gardens mimic these conditions naturally. To succeed, keep the soil firm and provide consistent moisture. The cooler conditions prevent splitting and the heads tighten over time. This really makes cabbage an anchor crop for shaded spaces. Beets produce abundant greens and steady root growth in low light. While beets grow fastest with some sun, they remain productive in indirect light, especially on the leafy side. Historically, beet greens kept families fed during shortages when roots took longer to size up. A north-facing garden allows you to harvest greens repeatedly while still producing usable roots later in the season. The key, honestly, is loose soil and steady watering. Green onions require almost no direct light to remain productive. Honestly, green onions are one of the most reliable crops for shady environments. In the past, people often grew them near cellar doors, on shaded steps, and along the sides of barns because they simply didn't need much light. A small plot in a north-facing garden can supply cut-and-come-again harvest all year, really. If grown hydroponically, even ambient room light is often enough, you know. Peas climb and produce pods well in cool, indirect light. You know, peas evolved in cool, cloudy climates and perform exceptionally well in north-facing zones. They make efficient use of whatever light they receive and continue to set pods as long as temperatures remain moderate. One practical method is to install a trellis against the north wall of a shed or building and let peas climb upward, benefiting from reflected light and cooler temperatures. North-facing gardens may never be the warmest or brightest part of your property, but they are far from wasted space. They echo centuries of food production in shaded terrains, monastery grounds, and densely built villages. When you match the right crops to the right microclimate, shade becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. These 10 vegetables prove that reliable, high-quality harvests don't depend on bright, direct sun. They depend on understanding the quiet environments where many plants have always grown best. For more deep-dive guides rooted in real history, hydroponic mastery and resilient growing strategies, subscribe to Hydrohaven and share this episode with others who want to turn every corner of their land into productive ground.